Welcome, everyone, to the Soul of the Everyman on the Artist First Radio Network. All past broadcasts are podcasts. Find them at artistfirst.com. Please send your questions and comments to dj@artistfirst.com. And now, ladies and gentlemen, here they are, Michael and Margaret Lyons.
Thank you very much, Z-Man, and I am Michael Lyons.
Mm-hmm. And I'm Margaret.
And my voice is just dulcet tonight.
Okay.
The dulcet tones. No, it's just horrible as always. It's maybe a little bit more horrible than normal.
I think the weather has gotten to you.
Something's gotten to me.
Mm-hmm.
But we're going to soldier on
mm-hmm.
and present tonight's show in living color.
Some kind of color.
In some kind of color. So anyway, in living color, tonight we are going to talk about a topic which is near and dear to many people. And some people have been frightened for most of their lives by it. But we're going to talk about parenting.
Mm-hmm.
And we have a lot of experience because we've had like several dozen children.
Oh, goodness gracious.
4. And of course, we had the experience of parenting with a deathly ill child. So there's another dimension perhaps to our parenting experience. But the normal foibles and ups and downs and crazy of parenting are enough trouble for anybody. And that's what we're going to kind of stick to tonight. But we have sort of a muse, and I think maybe we'll read it right off the bat. It's Dr. I believe he's a doctor.
Yes.
Dr. Russell Barkley, who's actually relatively famous for a couple of books that he wrote, notably about treatment and diagnosis and treatment of ADD and ADHD. And, his thesis being that the child, the ADHD and the ADD child, is not something that you necessarily jump right away, as was much of the fashion of the time, jump right away to medication and to sort of confrontational therapies and all these other things. And his thesis was more along the lines of understanding what ADD was, that it's an actual neurological disorder in true cases, and desperately overdiagnosed. But we're not going to go down that path. I was sort of struck by a clip that I saw of him talking about sort of parenting in general. And the funny thing, the takeaway from the clip, and we're going to talk about it a little bit, but the takeaway from the clip is that your children are not your product. They are not something that you built. They're not something that you have a lot of control over. And the funny line was that they are, he said, a mosaic of everybody in both of your parents, your mother and your father, both of your extended families. And mosaic would be more like a crazy grab bag, So all the traits of, weird Uncle Al and crazy Aunt Martha and, are all kind of in this giant grab bag, and you stuff both hands in, the two of you, and you just grab a fistful of whatever those traits are, and you stuff them together, and they are within your lovely, wonderful, precious offspring. Just latently sitting there, waiting to be discovered.
Mm-hmm.
Gee, I didn't know that. So it's and then you realize about yourself, of course, that that's you too. You are a grab bag of the last 40 generations of your extended family, and so it's sort of the nature versus nurture argument. The whole idea that somehow with the appropriate amount of stimulus, and he mentioned these this like baby Mozart thing, right? Where you're supposed to play Mozart to your child with, in utero. So you end up with this genius child who's, or you give them every possible opportunity in sports and in piano and you're going to engineer, and he
Well,
literally uses the word to engineer this perfect child, and almost none of it matters.
well, the his premise, which basically is it was the going theory when we were raising kids, is that you had to stimulate a baby's brain to grow neural pathways as well as develop um, more capacity for problem solving and thinking. So you were supposed to stimulate them almost constantly. And it's very funny because he talks about putting these visual toys within their focus field over their beds, in the stroller,
Right.
just things to stimulate the brain. And I remember all the toys that they were saying, that these are focused on helping the child begin to learn and
pattern recognition.
Yeah, and it was
high contrast.
Right. It was black and white and red.
Right.
With different colors.
And all made sounds and beeps and boops and all that other stuff.
Well, the whole concept was we're going to stimulate this child so that he's not going to miss out on anything.
Right.
So it went into, you think of the term helicopter parents. It's mostly because of this idea that you are responsible for this little life and you're going to do your very, very best to bring out the brilliance in this child.
Right.
It was believed that somehow you can manipulate that and bring out all these developmental markers.
Right. Inculcate them. And if you didn't do every one of those little things, it was your fault that your kid turned out to be some sort of a underdeveloped rotter.
Right. You were responsible for the state of your child.
Right.
And even though that didn't work on you from your parents, you're like, well, I'm different.
Yes.
I'm going to do it a different way. I'm going to find the way that's going to help this kid.
I'm just built different.
And, you conveniently turn your eyes away from all the tendencies that your own family has.
Yes. And he also mentioned something funny. Remember, he said that, this is a uniquely North American conceit. And something that, he said that if you look back at history, that your grandparents and their their parents and their parents before them all knew, is that your kids are unique individuals that you can give obviously some opportunities. You have to give them food, you have to give them shelter, you have to give them opportunities to learn, but they're going to pursue their own unique lives with their collection, their grab bag of all those personality traits. And he mentioned a number. He said 400 different personality, I'll say traits, but I said earlier to you, disorders, 400 personality disorders that make up every individual, including yourself, your lovely self. And those 400 different personality traits are not in your control. You basically have to deal with them just as you have to deal with every other person on the planet. When you meet somebody, they're kind of an unknown quantity. Now, with your children, you get to know them very, very early, so you can understand them better, and they can understand you better. You kind of warn the corners off each other. But if you are honest with yourself when you first meet that individual, some few moments after they are born into the world, their personality strikes you. You have an idea of what they're like, and they say by basically around the age of 1.5, 2, their personalities are fully formed. They may not be completely expressed. They may not have the ability to do all the things that they want to do, but they want to do them. And Margaret just mentioned it earlier. Your amount of your role here is to provide them with these kind of basic needs and with a fair amount of opportunity and some stimulus. But his Russell Barkley's contention was that in North America we said, well, if a little bit of stimulus is good, a lot must be much better.
Right. Right. If a little is good,
then just pile it on.
Keep shoveling.
Right, and it does not work that way.
No, and it's interesting because that argument of nature versus nurture, and what they're finding, what his findings are, is that you have most influence over those 400 psychological traits.
Disorders, that's traits.
Before the age of 7, you'll have the most influence before 7. After 7, your influence drops to 6%, which I thought was absolutely fascinating.
Right.
And then after, what was it, 21?
After 21, it's 0.
It's 0.
But between 7
no. Hold right there.
Right.
Just right there. Don't just dive off. Understand, at 21, you have 0 influence over your child's 400 psychological issues.
Traits, whatever. Right.
And it's only 6% once you hit the age of 7. You sit here and you go, oh my.
Oh my.
Because you keep thinking, well, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. No.
I mean, 7 is basically when they've just begun school, a couple years into school. And you're thinking, well, now I'll get them into the best schools, and I'll get them into the best programs, and I'll make sure they're taking piano and bocce ball lessons and all the different sports balls and every advanced program. And when they don't do well in everything, what do parents do? They feel guilty, and they go around with, oh, if only I had stimulated them more with that thing that I thought was too expensive, and the baby Mozart and all the other piano lessons, and they really literally walk around beating themselves up about how their children turned out. And there's certainly, and again, Barclay says this, if you didn't, like poison them or malnourish them or
beat them
or, yes, maltreat them, if you just gave them a decent shelter and, regular nutrition and a non, just a regular old environment, the Mozarts of the world, because that's who they are, will rise up and be the Mozarts of the world, regardless of how you treated them. And the average people of the world will be the average people of the world, and it's a spectrum, as is everything. So in other words, there's no way to turn somebody who has no innate talent for music into a Beethoven or a Bach or anybody who's this genius musician, no matter how many lessons you give them, no matter how many private tutors you and what you'll basically do is make them a little miserable.
Well,
you'll make both of you a little miserable.
Both of you miserable, but what I'm trying to set as a foundation was the parental philosophy
Hmm.
of the time that you can do it, you can make them better by putting them into all these different stimulating classes or courses
Mhm.
and goodness, even the toys that you were buying for the little ones. I think there was a company called Baby Einstein.
Mhm.
So that when you understand that that was the environment, and it reminds me of what your mother said.
Hmm.
And before then, they would always be referencing the experts. Before your mother, it was Dr. Spock.
Uh-huh.
And then your mom was, what was her name? Adele
Adele
Davis.
Davis.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
Right. And then progressed into Montessori.
Mhm. Oh, huge, huge.
Mm-hmm.
The Montessori method.
Right. Just continuing that way. Now, not saying that any of that is bad, but it's just understanding that this was what the parents had to work with in each generation. It was a completely different philosophy going from Dr. Spock to Adele Davis to Montessori.
And on and on. And
And
you
on
know
and on.
who proselytized and pushed this as hard as possible? Why? Because they were able to sell these things was the advertising in Madison Avenue. And and the Guilt was a
Oh,
beautiful
guilt.
device. Right.
Guilt, yes.
The Guild was a beautiful device to get you to buy these things, buy our 17-part program so that your kid can be a genius. And if you don't do it, look at this rotten kid that you didn't give the opportunities to, that because of your inaction and your inability to invest in the future and make your children into world beaters and global dominating winners in every sport and every category and onto the best schools and all that over and over and over again.
I've been with this as a foundation,
Mhm.
understanding, knowing that parents are pushing and trying to bring their kids up to the best. Also realizing that there are many parents who are living through their children.
Yes.
We suddenly get something called participation trophies
Yes.
because, they've been working so hard, they've got to have something in hand.
Right.
And you look at that, you're like, what was the purpose of this exactly? Were they learning? Were they living? Was this something that they really wanted to do? Or was this something that you wanted them to do?
Mm.
Because you're engineering your child at that point. This is understanding that this is the mentality of an engineer. I'm going to take this. I'm going to try this. That's not working. Let's try this other thing. Let's take this part out and put this part in. And your child is a living, breathing being. You can't engineer them like that.
Mm.
But that was the belief. And it also goes to believing that you can engineer your DNA, by the way.
Well, we should go there too. But you know what? Before we're kind of getting right ahead of ourselves. Why don't we do Dr. Barkley's quote, if you wouldn't mind?
Okay. Um,
This is in context of what his talk was. This was sort of the excerpt of it.
right. You are a shepherd, not an engineer. Children are a unique combination of your extended family's traits. You do not get to design them. You get to nurture them. And this is Dr. Russell
Russell.
Barkley.
Dr. Barkley. And so this is exactly what makes this beautiful. What Margaret just said, you're not an engineer, but what are you? And he used this beautiful analogy, which is it really comes right out of the Bible, if you will, but certainly out of human experience up into, the beginning of the 20th century, you're not engineering your children. You're not building them. And that's the whole fallacy of building them or living through them or turning them into something, making something out of them. You're a shepherd. Shepherds don't build sheep.
Sheep.
You can't build you can't build a sheep. You can't. And it used to be. I think there was something called build a sheep or build a bear or something
Well,
like
it's
that.
Build-A-Bear,
Build a
but
bear, but you can't build a sheep or a bear. But you can shepherd them. And when I saw this, and I thought very very much of the Good Shepherd, and the Good Shepherd comes again out of the Old Testament and into the New. But it really talks about, if you just look at it from the point of view of the philosophy, the shepherd as first of all, shepherds weren't all that wonderful of people. Okay, they were they lived fairly rough. They lived out in the wild. They lived with the sheep. They had to, be on guard or be present with these animals who needed their care, but also needed their supervision. So you're a shepherd, you're in the wild, you're in the trenches, you're a parent, you're in the wild, you're in the trenches with these savages who are going to eat you alive. But your job is to keep an eye on them, to lead them, to protect them from dangers that they don't understand at this point, and to guard them against the vicissitudes of the world, where there are things out there like the apocryphal wolf that's outside the pasture, outside the pen.
well, the predators.
The predators
There are predators outside of the sheep pen.
outside of the sheep pen. And so you're a shepherd. You're the good shepherd because you are leading your flock. You're leading your sheep. Your sheep know your name. They know your voice. So these are your children. When you embark upon the good ship parenthood, you and your best buddy, your partner, and you decide foolishly to have children,
Mm,
you are presented with something, a unique being, an individual who needs all of your care and expects all of your care, but that you, and this can't be stressed enough, you did not build. People, have this sort of impression, modern day human beings, modern humans have this impression that somehow they built their child and that they can program their child. They can um, um, carve them and sculpt them and mold them into something. And almost been told that themselves over and over again by the society at large. So you have to build your children, you have to sculpt them, you have to mold them, you have to create these individuals who will then go out into the world and conquer. And that's not the truth at all. The truth is that you're handed some unique individual who you have to learn about. You have to understand, and they have to understand you. And your true responsibility beyond the basics of feeding them and caring for them and giving them a safe environment, giving them shelter, your true task as a parent is to understand who they are, not change who they are, not mold who they are, not build them. You're not an engineer. You're not going in there and debugging your children. They are full of bugs. They have 400 personality disorders. But you've got 400 personality disorders too. And if you're lucky, a few of them will line up with each other and you'll get on. Like, I like him. He's crazy too. But in fact, a lot of those personality traits will not line up. Your children will find things about you that drive them crazy.
well, usually when you both have the same trait,
That's true.
that's when you drive each other
Then
crazy.
you button heads.
Mhm.
Then you're both, it's sort of sheep. But you're given that responsibility to be their shepherd, and you're given a mystery box, a sort of a Pandora's box, And if you treat it as something that you can build and mold and debug, you will never really understand it. You've been given this unique being, and there is no instruction manual. There is no warranty. There is no like parts list or bill of materials. You are not the engineer here. Source, God, if you will, is the engineer of the being. And not even that's not even true, really. You come into incarnation as a spirit, which now inhabits a body and has a soul and a personality. And you're in the company of other beings. Those beings may have been here just a little bit longer and have just a little bit more ability, but they're no less important than you are. Your children are just as much a being that has all of the rights and privileges of beinghood. In other words, they are a unique, precious individual that you have the opportunity to know from their very beginning, their very beginning of this incarnation. So it's a special relationship, but it's a relationship which requires discovery. People get their children and they think, I know everything about them. They're just like me. I'm going to make them exactly like I want them to be. I'm going to give them all these things, and I'm going to, and they need all this stimulus, and they all that stuff. And these children are going there and going, well, I like that one thing, but those other 17 things I could care less about, and I want to do these other 40 things, and they just won't let me do them. Well, that's where the disconnect starts, right there. Is you're trying to tell them who they are, and they're like, you're not listening.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because you believe you know the way this should go. You're older. You're supposed to. I believe that the
Seen and not heard?
no, the focus, no. The focus was you need to guide them into the world so that they know how to navigate it.
Yes.
Okay. But the truth of the matter is what you're actually trying to do is find the qualities in them that will help them make decisions in this world where they don't crash and burn. They have certain tendencies or talents that they need to nurture. If it's music, if it's writing, if it's a physical sport that they're actually really good at, not just okay, he's a little bit better than the rest of his peers. Why? Because maybe physically, developmentally, he's got a little more maturity on it, a little older. But to truly be a prodigy in any way, shape, or form, yes, if they have an interest, to encourage them with that. But you have to also understand that they are this mishmash of all the things that you have seen in your family and is getting jumbled around, and you're wondering what's going to pop up to the top. Something is going to just make its way to the surface. And to be honest about it, because you believed that all those negative traits that you saw in your family, you could somehow nip in the bud.
Yeah, expunge.
And that's not what happens.
No.
It's really not what happens.
And people can be forgiven, Margaret, I think, because, your children look like you, and they talk like you, and they have a lot of affinity with you. And so you unfortunately get people who really, as you said earlier, they really vicariously live through their children, mothers living through their daughters, fathers living through their sons, and so on, such that they want to, in essence, take over that life, and it can become very toxic and very, very, it can literally be a pathology where and there are various forms of it where the parent um, uh, takes over like some sort of a vampiric way. Everything that the child does, every accomplishment that they do is somehow reflective of them. You see this, you probably have, you can speak more eloquently about this in Asian cultures where you're nothing but the extension of your parents and your family, and everything that you're supposed to do and everything that you're every honor which you gather is not yours. It's ours. And you're only acting because we built you, we made you, you are ours, you're our product and our almost our slave.
Right. Well, that was the belief that, and it's the hubris of man, honestly, to believe that you can control the development of your child. I mean, literally. And because people will look at you and, what do you mean? Of course, I'm in control of the development of my child. It's like, not really. As long as you keep feeding them and housing them and not abusing them, they're going to continue growing on the set course that they have. And you believing that, how do I say this? You believing that you are capable of altering what's going on in the traits of your family, frankly, is not really if you look at it in terms of evolution, nature, it would never permit you to manipulate your children that way. It doesn't, you would never survive. Humanity would be dead completely if parents could absolutely manipulate their children. It's just hubris. Again, nature would never give you that ability.
That power.
Right, which is why they don't pay attention to you after age 7.
Right.
They have to follow what's unfolding within them naturally, not imposing what you believe should be the way they need to develop. The difference is a hothouse plant and one that does it naturally. Forced blooms in a hothouse plant, they're short-lived, and they're not growing according to their own internal schedule. There's a lot of manipulation that has to happen to get this plant to reproduce.
Well, that's a wonderful analogy. Horticulture and especially modern horticulture is all about hybrids, right? It's all about, as you said, the hothouse plants, the plants which are, we're all familiar with them because you buy them and you hang them up and they die instantly because they can't stand. They're not hardy. They've lived in no actual real environment. And that's why, Margaret, what you just said is exactly right. Nature understands that the previous generation, that which is bringing forth the new generation, knows some things, but you have to let the new generation learn in the wild, in the actual current environment, informed somewhat by what has happened before. But if you just give them the rules that worked yesterday and the day before and 100 years ago and say, you must do exactly this, that's a death knell for the society. It's a death knell for evolution. It's a death knell for the survival of the individual and the species.
Right.
So, yes, nature enforces this rule because that's what survives for the millions of years. And we, modern societies trying to fly against this, run smack dab into it. You know, the idea that totalitarian control and the rules of yesteryear are going to carry us forward forever. If it worked 10 years ago, it's going to work today. And we know it sounds foolish. You almost laugh at it instinctively, but that's um, what rigid, top-down control types of societies try to do, and they no more have the ability to adapt and actually work in the current world without a whole lot of sort of artificial propping up from below, and usually grinding energy and opportunity out of the actual citizens who are part of this society. So it doesn't work in societies. It doesn't work in the open nature, the natural world, and it doesn't work on an individual to individual or family to family basis.
It's denying a very simple and basic premise that we as human beings have. We are capable of adapting
Right.
to our situations. And there are many situations. When you try to control the development of a being, a person, you have to understand that what you're doing is you've taken a framework of a certain type of world you believe that this child is going to be in.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not what they're designed to do. They're designed to enter into a situation and shift and change things to their best advantage, to begin to understand, to learn how to interact with others so that it's all beneficial, mutually beneficial. And the situations will change. What I think of is just simply the environment. With suddenly all the snow that came down for different countries, different cities or towns, and they're not accustomed to this. And if all you knew was, well, we only get so much of this, and this is all we're really adapted to. I think of the snow that fell in the middle states and southern states. They're not accustomed to having snow fall out of the sky and then driving on it, trying to get around on it, never mind ice. But they were not prepared for that. And human beings adapt. The ones that couldn't adapt were in very deep trouble.
Yeah.
So it's understanding that what you're trying to do is bring the traits out within that vast 400 psychological trait
Disorders.
baskets that there happen to be, trying to help them nurture the traits that will be the tools that they need to go forward, whatever their path happens to be.
Right. So, I mean, just so we understand that as a shepherd, you have a relationship with these people, these new people that come into your life, these children, and the idea is that if you're trying to control them, engineer them, build them, you are going up against both nature and the way the world works against reality, and you're projecting that which is the immutable past, on the unknowable future, with the idea that if it was good for me, it'll be good for them. If these are the rules that our society lives by, then those are the rules forever onward. And if you try to do that, you will fall upon the hard rocks of reality. You'll run into the snowstorm that you didn't never foresee. Why? Because it never happened before, so it can't happen in the future. Well, it can. And so the right way of doing this as a shepherd is, yes, you guide, You see perhaps that the snowstorm is coming, and you say, well, we have to get prepared for this. And maybe one of your sheep, one of these new beings that you're prepared that you're sheltering now, has from some either unique new trait that came in or some combination of multiple traits, has the ability to adapt to that better. You have to allow that. You have to allow your charges to grow and to separate and to become their own unique individuals in the best way possible. If your child is if your child has some unique and precious ability, you'll never know about it unless you listen and perceive. When you look at a being, when you look at another individual, it's not a telling, it's a conversation. You project who you are. You tell your children through every action, and they are listening carefully all the time. Through every action that you take, you inform your children about who you are as a being and individual. And for whatever reason, you're thrown together in this particular time and place, and you have to be humble enough to reveal to them over time that you are going through life for the first time too. Yeah, you've been here a few more years. You've got a little more wisdom under your belt, but you are not a perfect being that can never make mistakes. That's the other thing, Margaret, is that parents, engineers want to portray themselves to their creations as gods, as these perfect beings who can do no wrong. And why would you ever question me? Because I've been here for 20 more years than you. But that attitude is the attitude of an engineer that is talking to its creation. As a shepherd, you have to say, well, I made a mistake too. It was my first time through these mountains. It was my first time through this big snowstorm. I tried my best. So children, as you listen to your parents and they listen to you, you realize that you're both beings together, that you have a unique and special relationship, but that neither one of you is a god to the other. The child can't have its way through all of its whims and whatever it feels like doing at any time, because the shepherd knows that this is not good for you. This may hurt you. This opportunity you're not ready for yet, and you have to listen to them. So you have to say to yourself, well, maybe they are ready. Maybe my fears shouldn't be projected upon the child.
The truth of the matter is, you have to understand that as a parent, it really isn't about you.
Mm.
It is about the child. And they'll say, oh, well, of course it is. That's what I'm thinking about. How the kid's doing this and that, whether he's doing it well or not. But what you're actually doing is looking through the lens of how it makes you feel as a parent.
Mm-hmm.
At that point, it becomes about you. Oh, they're not doing well at school for this. Oh, I'm doing a bad job.
Right.
It's not about you. That's a hard one for a lot of parents to let go of, because the kids are in that transition period. And I'd like to bring that stat up again, that after the age of 7, you have a 6% influence on what goes on with them. What actually has more of an influence is the environment that you put them in. Whether it's schools or the neighborhoods or communities that you happen to be in, or the friends that they have. They have the other 94% influence on your children. It's the environment that you're putting them in. And it's just what Dr. Barkley had said was, as a shepherd, you choose the pastures that you put the sheep in.
Mm-hmm.
And this is pretty much what he's talking about. Understanding that the environment that you open the doors to and put them in is where their development and what influences them is going to hit.
But as you said also, Ma, that's for a period of time. And then they go into, he says 21, but at some point, as a shepherd, you have to let those sheep go. And you have to let them, you have to let these in. That's where the analogy breaks down, because a shepherd never lets his sheep go. Actually, his sheep remain under his pastoral care until they die.
They're a flock.
They're a flock. But these individuals, your children, are you're their shepherd for the first few very important years of their lives. And then you have to be wise enough and listen carefully enough to know when it's time to step back and let them go into the pastures that you perhaps initially chose, but then they're going to choose their own pastures. They're going to know you, but they're not going to listen to you. And parents get very guilty about that. Why aren't you listening to me?
This is, but this is understanding what it means to have free will.
Mm-hmm.
And as a shepherd, you can see it from a different perspective, the way their lives are unfolding around you. And you do want things to go well for them. But it's also understanding that they're going to choose their path. And you have to let them choose the path. You will do your very, very best to try to keep them within certain safe fields. But they have the free will to go off.
And you have to let them do that. And something else you said, which was very, I think should be brought up again, Ma, is you said that, at some point, they're going to go off on their own. And you, as a parent, it's difficult to see them struggle, to see them fail, to then say to yourself, well, I should have done this, and make it about yourself. And the most difficult thing as a shepherd, as you let those sheep become independent, they're no longer your sheep, is to say that the things that they do, which I wouldn't have chosen for them, that I see them struggle in it, and it hurts, because you love these sheep, you love these children,
you love your charges,
you love them to death. But the part of that love is to give them up to source, to give them up. You can say, give them up to God. It's something that everyone deserves, that you wanted for yourself. You knew when you wanted to be your own person. And if you had good parents, they let you do it. And they became, the relationship changed so that that if you've preserved your relationship with your parents into adulthood, they become more like friends, or at least more like people that you like to hang out with once in a while, that you go visit, that you do things with and for, but they're not controlling your life. If you have a toxic relationship with somebody who was a parent to you, it can become something that is desperately damaging. This "do it for me because you love me" kind of thing. That, if nothing else, knowing when to let the person with whom you've had a relationship since they were born, listening to them, letting them understand who you are, because again, you're going through this the first time too. It's the first time you were a parent. So you make all your mistakes with your first child. You ruin them, and then you let them go. And they ruin you to a certain extent. But the point is that as you do that, and you're learning, they're learning, you're listening, they're listening, when it's time for them to go, they go off and they do something, maybe something which distances you from them. You have to let that happen because they're 400 unique traits that come from not only just your family history, but from all humanity, because those traits are part of what makes us human beings, are going to sometimes be different from what you wanted it to be.
Well, when you think of it as 400 psychological traits that is in your giant grab bag, what combination comes out? You have a vast majority of variations, nothing but variations that
Lots of combinations and 400 factorial.
I'm right. So first of all, to understand that. I do remember when the kids were beginning to date, all the boys. We had always said, you need to kind of look at the family they came from, because it's going to matter. Family. And I do remember one of the kids responding, well, I'm marrying her. I'm not marrying the family. I've heard that response from a lot of people. I'm marrying this person.
Right.
I'm not marrying the family that he came from. And it's not acknowledging that there are 400 variable traits that they came from. And do you really believe that this is just not going to come back to you in some way? Because once you do have children, it stares you right in the face.
Well, let's digress on that for a minute. I mean, when you meet someone, you start to have a relationship with them. You're listening to them, they're listening to you. You're starting to understand them as a being. If you're entering into this in the right way, it's a two-way street. But when you hear their voice, when you hear their personality, when you hear their unique being, it has as an ensouled incarnate in flesh, it has all those influences from their whole family line, and you won't know those people, but you'll get to know them a little bit through the relationship you have with that person. And then, as Margaret just said, if you have children, you mix up, the gene pool is that giant, like the lottery ticket basket that you roll around a few hundred times and someone sticks their hand in and they pull out psychopath. Woohoo! Bingo, you win, or you lose.
Well, it's just when you think of it, it's 400 little balls rolling around in a cage.
Yeah.
And suddenly
you get 47. Yeah. What do I win? Oh, no, I'm sorry. 47 doesn't win.
But thinking of it that way, it's hilarious.
Yeah.
But that's the truth of the body that you are in, or you're inhabiting, your touch point your touch point to this reality is through this body. And this body has a baseline genetic. All I can think of is, what was the percentage of, they called it garbage DNA?
Oh, a lot, yeah.
Yeah. Basically, that high percentage of garbage DNA basically means that the scientists have no idea what that DNA actually is.
But you're right. I mean, you have the body, which is all that DNA.
What I'm trying to say is your DNA combination that comes up is taken from both sides of a vast family. And which combination of DNA trait is going to rise up and present itself? So you remember it, and you get terms like, oh yeah, that person's the black sheep of the family.
Well, yeah.
And it's, again, understanding that, you never know what's cooking underneath
the hood. I mean, shepherds occasionally get a black sheep, but I want to. I mean,
black sheep.
But the I mean, the three things which come together to become a being. You have your eternal spirit. You have that which is of source. You have the ensoulment of that spirit in flesh, and you have the flesh itself. When you're listening and relating to and having a relationship with an other individual, that person with whom you will spend much of your life with, and it could be your child, it could be your spouse, or whoever, that you're listening to hundreds of thousands, if not millions of years of DNA. You're listening to a soul, which is the interface um, of, spirit into flesh, and then the spirit itself, which is even older, which is eternal, of
Timeless.
source and timeless. So you are interacting on all those three levels: the timeless, the soul, which is the immutable, eternal part of the person, which you see as the being that you know when they're two and the being that you know when they're 82. That's the soul that travels along. You know that ensoulment. And then there's the body, and the body is form, and the form of the newborn and the form of the 82-year-old are very different. And all along that way, the body changes and the soul learns and has experiences, and the eternal is there informing and bringing in source and channeling in grace. And you've got the opportunity and the unique uh, honor and privilege of getting to know that person, that person who was just born into your family with 400 personality disorders, and the person with whom you had that person with, which you both have 400 personality disorders that you call a marriage. But no, that's the relationship of human being to human being, of being to being. And you have to listen.
Well, it's understanding that it begins to build into something completely different.
Mm.
And when you look at um, the possibilities of combinations with your own children, um, his Dr. Barkley's advice is don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Just let it be. Um, you didn't do wrong. You have to just watch the unfolding
Right.
that is happening in front of you.
Enjoy the show.
And realize that, you're human too.
Mm-hmm.
Do not have guilt. Do not feel guilty that somehow you did it wrong. You're doing it the exact way your DNA had presented itself.
If you're listening, you're doing exactly what you're supposed to be doing, because you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And the moment of now can help you here in all cases. Because when your children when your ego says you're doing it wrong, you have to say to your ego, I'm just doing it. And this is the moment of now, and here we are, and we just have to enjoy it and be in it and understand that it's going to change no matter what we do.
And we have reached the end of our hour.
And I'm glad we shepherded our way through it.
And I'm Margaret.
And thank you for listening.